Today I've got a cool metal riff lesson for you, and we're gonna kind of go back to that classic 80s heavy metal style of playing here, and we're gonna be in the key of D minor. In fact, I'm gonna show you some really cool ways to play this chord that just really gives it that extra little grit and edge, and I think you're gonna like this lesson. We're also gonna go over a few progressions and just different things you can do with this chord and the way we're gonna play it, so I think you're really gonna enjoy this one. Now we're gonna do some tone talk at the end of the lesson here, so make sure you hang around for that. I've actually got some new stuff I'm going to share with you. Actually, some stuff I'm taking away, simplifying. But let's get right to the lessons. I'm going to show you 3 different progressions, and we're going to talk about some ways you can play this really killer chord, D minor. Now the cool thing about this progression is you'll notice we're keeping that open D string constant throughout the entire riff, which makes it really cool sounding. It's like that note is kind of like that bass line, right? And it's just kind of just driving the progression, but then you're changing everything else after that, which is really cool. So you've got that consistency, and it just, I don't know, I don't know how to describe it. It just sounds really cool. So the first chord that we're playing there, it's a D minor. We're in the key of D minor, but we're not playing a full D minor chord. We're actually only playing the first 3 notes of that D minor, okay? Which actually, those are the first 3 notes of a D major as well. But never mind that. We are in the key of D minor, so we're just playing that open D, and we're always going to play that open D, and then frets 2 and 3. Just like you're playing a D, but we're going to stop at those 3 strings. Now what I'm doing in the riff though, this is where things get a little interesting, is I'm going to, at some point, I'm going to play that second note of what we're playing differently. So I'm going to play an open G string by removing my first finger from that second fret. Okay, so it'll sound like this. That to me just sounds really cool. It's like, okay, we're playing that D, but then we give it this little dose of hot sauce on the chicken wing, so to speak. It just kind of adds a new dynamic to the riff as we're starting out of the gate with that. So next, after we do that, what we're going to do is we're going to move that second fret of the G string up to the 3rd fret. So we'll be playing the 3rd frets on the G and the B strings, okay? Like this. Real simple, and again, we're keeping that D string open the entire time. Next, we're going to slide everything up a whole step, and we're going to start out on, again, this is the G and the B string, we're going to start out on frets 5 and 6. And then we're just going to go 5, 5, 5, 6 to 5, 5. Again, keeping that D string open. Now that little part right there, I love those little arpeggiated notes, and this is kind of what gives it that extra little 80s metal vibe there. So all I'm doing here is I'm just going back and forth. This is kind of a string skipping exercise too, by the way. I'm going back and forth between the D and the B string. So watch my pick hand, and then just watch my finger position up here. We're just going back and forth between the 5th and 6th fret on the B string as we're string skipping, right? Picking that D string and B string, going back and forth there. So I'm going to go through this riff one more time. Alright, so we're starting out with that same 3-note pattern there, playing that D minor, but only playing the first 3 notes of that chord. And actually we're arpeggiating that, but we're starting with the highest note going to the lowest note there. So now I do all downstrokes as I'm arpeggiating that. That's just how I do that. So I kind of recommend doing it that way because you get, I don't know, just get a little bit different sound. You could try different ways. Some people like to alternate pick when they're arpeggiating. Again, when I'm arpeggiating like that, I'm always just doing downstrokes only. So just kind of a Jason tip there. What I'm doing after that though is I'm going to what would be a C chord, right? We're not playing the entire C chord here. But what I'm doing here, and this is kind of a different finger position, and if you're kind of just starting out with these types of riffs, it can be a little challenging because you're going from this to this, okay? We're using that pinky finger here. Where I'm at, okay, I'm starting on the D string, and we're on frets, I'm just gonna count them down. We're on frets 5, 5, and 3. But we're only playing those 3 notes. So think in terms of this. Really cool sounding chord, man. I love that. But what I would recommend before arpeggiating those, again, if you're having trouble switching back and forth, is just play those 2 chords. Then start arpeggiating it after that, once you get that transition down. Now, all I'm doing there is I'm just playing the 5th note in the higher octave of the root note. And that's those little 2-string patterns, those little 2-string chords rather, that just sound really, really cool. I believe they're called inversions because, again, you're not starting with the root note. If you started with the root note of the chord, then you would be playing this. Instead, I'm playing this. And what I like about that is that you can kind of give a little vibrato, you can give it a little bit more edge as you're playing those little 2-note chords there. So again, you know, it would be a B flat to C, and it's still a B flat to C, but we're not playing the full power chords there. We're only playing the 5th note and then the higher octave of the root note, which in this case, we're going from frets 3 and 3, which we're on the D and G string, we're sliding up to 5 and 5. All right, so let's go through that one more time. So this is a pretty simple progression here, but before we get into this, I want you to understand something, guys. I want you to understand that not everything you play on guitar has to be super complicated. Actually, most things you play on guitar, most things that you're writing, it doesn't have to be some riff that no one else can figure out how to play. That kind of stuff, it appeals to guitar players, and that's really just about it. To everybody else out there that listens to music, that just loves certain styles of music and enjoys music, they may not care so much about that. They care that the song and the riffs, they care that it resonates with them, that it tells a story and it makes them feel like they're a part of that story, okay? So just want you to understand that before we get into this, because a lot of people will see a lesson like this progression I'm about to show you, and they're like, oh, well that's not hard. I can play that easy, that's easy. So what? Who cares? It sounds cool. That's the whole point, right? And I'm not knocking complex riffs. You guys hear me play, you guys hear me shred sometimes and whatever, but I don't know, maybe in my older age, I'm starting to not really slow down a bit, but starting to think about more about the song itself, about the melodies, about the different things I can bring out, and again, take that listener on a journey. So I didn't mean to go down a rabbit hole there, but I hope that helps you guys. I hope that helps you understand that not everything you play In fact, most things that you play, they don't have to be super complex. So here's what we're doing. Again, we're playing that D. We're starting out with that D minor. What I'm doing here, you'll notice this sounded a little heavier. It had that heavy undertone. What we did is we started the D chord on what is the lower octave of the fifth note of the D minor chord, or D in general, right? What that note is the open A string. So instead of playing this, and I'm playing the full pattern there, but with an open E string as well. But instead of playing what you just heard, I'm gonna start out with the open A. Now listen to the difference between the two real quick. You can feel that bottom end, and hopefully you can feel that on camera here as much as I can feel it in the room. But you can just feel that extra bottom end with that open A string. Again, that's your lower octave of your fifth note of that D chord. Okay. After that, I go to a C and I just do a little arpeggiated riff there. Just a regular C chord. Now, I like to play my Cs, and I do this more than often when I'm playing a C. Instead of playing it with that B string first fret, I'll often play my C with the B string third fret. I just like how that sounds. So again, like even playing acoustic, when I'm playing my acoustic gigs, I play pretty much every C like that. So again, let's go from that really heavy D to that C. Then I'm going to play a B flat and another C, but I'm going to play the C different this time. So here are those notes. That sounded much heavier than. Listen to the difference and I'll tell you what I'm doing. What I'm doing here for those power chords, you know, your B flat is the A and D string frets 1 and 3. So for that, I'm going to use the same concept as we did with that D that we played. Remember, we didn't start with a D note. We started with the lower octave of the fifth note for that chord. Doing the same thing for these next two power chords here. So instead of playing A and D 1 and 3, we're going to keep that position, but we're going to start with the first string first fret. That is that fifth note, the lower octave fifth note of the power chord. Sounds really cool. And then we just slide that up to a C. So that's just a little trick to make your power chord sound heavier. I know I've pointed this out on many videos, but I just want to throw that in here for this little riff. So let's go through this one more time. Now it's time for some tone talk. I'm going to show you everything I used and didn't use to get the tone that you heard. Now, granted, I didn't mic anything. None of this stuff was recorded through the studio or anything like that. What you heard was just kind of out in the open. And real quick, what I'm using here for my videos lately, like what you just saw, is this little Rode mic here. This is the Rode, what is this? Rode Video Mic NTG. And I just connect it to my camera. Now right now I've got a lavalier mic that I've had this for ages now. It was only like 20 bucks and it works okay. I probably need to upgrade, but when I'm doing the lessons like you just saw, again, I'm using this mic because having this thing, the cord right here kind of gets in the way. So anyway, I like to share this kind of stuff with you guys in case, you know, in case you're doing similar things as well. But that being said, I'm using my EVH, okay? I'm using my EVH amp, my 5153, the EL34. Most of you guys who have been watching my channel for any amount of time, you know what amp I use, because that's really the only amp I own right now. So that's what I'm using. We'll go through the settings real quick here. So I'm using the blue channel. This is a 3-channel amp. I'm using the blue channel. So blue channel's not a super high gain channel. So I've got my gain cranked up all the way. All right, now if I were to turn the volume up, I would back the gain off a little bit. But let's go through this real quick. My lows are almost straight up and down. Got the mids cut just a little. Got the highs boosted a little here. And my presence is just barely boosted a tiny bit. Here's where the change comes in. Let's move down to the pedal board. You see, I've only got 2 pedals here, okay? I've got the smart gate, which the blue channel does not need a noise gate, so I didn't even have this thing on. What I did use, though, was a little delay. I've got this Boss digital delay, the DD7. It's almost overkill for me, but I saw it was used and it was a good price. I'm like, okay, I'll grab it. I like simple stuff. I'm like Leonard Skinner. I'm a simple man. Now, you've probably seen some of my prior videos where I had a larger pedal board and a few more pedals. Now, I've never been a big fan of having a ton of pedals. It's overwhelming to me, having to change channels in the amp, then having to click this pedal on, that one off, and then singing and playing at the same time. It just overwhelms me. I like to keep things simple. Doesn't mean you have to, that's just how I operate, that's how my mind operates. And it dawned on me last night, this is the change that may be coming up here. It dawned on me last night, I was actually playing an acoustic gig. That's something that my wife and I do several times a month. We go out and we play acoustic gigs at wineries and breweries and stuff like that, places like that. And we play a lot of 70s and 80s type stuff. But I've got a separate pedal board for my live acoustic gigs. I've got this pedal board with the Fishman Tone DEQ, and I've also got the little TC Electronics Ditto, the looper pedal. Now, here's the thing. I have to borrow my power supply that I have in the studio down here for that pedal board. Now I know you're probably thinking, well, Jason, dude, just buy a separate power supply, duh. But I'm really just trying to simplify everything, guys. So what I'm thinking about doing, I've been watching a lot of videos on this, the Line 6 Pod Go. I have a Pod Go wireless, which I already have the wireless set up, but the Line 6 Pod Go gives me all the effects, you know, it's got some nice acoustic sounds and effects on there as well, so I could do that. That would also allow me to maybe play some electric at my live acoustic gigs. I could, like, for example, I could just record, loop a clean tone, like a little progression, and then play some little distorted lead. You know, I'm not really playing metal out there because, you know, it's just me. I'm the only instrument out there. Again, my wife sings on some of the songs with me, but I could just throw in some more dynamics, just play a clean loop or something like that, and play a little lead behind it. It would just sound cool, and then kind of alternate that back and forth between electric and acoustic and so forth. And I think it would just sound a lot better. I'm not really overly happy with the Fishman Tone DEQ. It sounds good, but what I've heard from the Pod Go, I've just heard some better sounds, and there's more effects capabilities and that sort of thing. So anyway, how does this relate to what I have in my studio and electric? You're like, Jason, dude, you just went way off track. Well, I've considered like shaving down what I need for my amp as well. I've actually considered getting rid of all the pedals except for the noise gate. That you need, okay? You need the noise gate for the high gain channel. But I've considered just getting rid of everything else because I really don't need it. If I'm recording with my amp, if I'm recording in the studio, I'm micing my amp, any effects that I use, I'm gonna add in the studio later. You don't really want to record a live amp with effects because if you don't like the way those effects turn out, in the end, you can't change it. You've got to go back and re-record it again. So it's like, okay, I rarely ever will I use delay or chorus or anything on my amp while I'm recording something. Again, I'm going to add that when I get into the studio as a plugin or whatever. Second thing, the little bit that I do play out live with my amp, because I'm not playing with a band, I'm not playing my solo stuff because, you know, it's just me, my metal stuff. So it's like, really, I'm not playing out with it at all right now. I played out with it a few times earlier this year, but even then, you know, again, being on stage and having to worry about all the pedals, it's just like, I'd rather just click the channel, going from the blue channel to red, or the clean channel to red channel, whatever. I'd rather just have that one channel to go back and forth on, and that's it. My noise gate, it's on the whole time. I don't have to worry about anything else. I can focus on playing and singing. The only effect I really like to have is when I'm playing guitar solos, I like to have a little delay behind my guitar solos. So would I miss that? I don't know. If I was playing live with a band, I don't know that you're even really going to hear that delay in my leads if everything else is going on in a live setting. You got drums and another guitar player and bass player, so forth, or even if I'm playing along with my metal backing tracks, which I've actually done a couple, small shows playing along and singing along with my backing tracks. You really couldn't notice the delay on my leads at all. So it's like, okay, is there really any point in having a delay, for my live amp? Now the last thing, and don't crucify me for this, and I don't think this will actually happen, but for a few seconds today, I actually considered getting rid of my EVH amp and just not having an amp, and maybe getting something like the Kemper or one of these other units. I know, what is it, the Neural DSP has something out, I can't remember the name of it, but something like that. Even the Line 6 Helix, even if I were playing my metal stuff out live, right, I don't know, it's just more feasible now to have something like that instead of having to lug around the amp and the pedal board and everything else, all the cables, all that stuff. It's just like, man, this would really simplify everything. Now, would I still want to record an amp for my albums? I'm on the fence about that, really. I mean, I was just dead set on recording my album, this album I'm working on right now, recording it with the EVH amp, with it mic'd. And I had to kind of step back and think about that. It's like, well, why am I wanting to record it with an amp? Am I really wanting to record it because it really sounds better? Does it really sound better than my plugins? I mean, when I hear them side by side, it's like, sometimes the plugins, I mean, they sound just as good. Is it that? Is it really that? Or is it just the fact that I want to say, hey, I recorded my album with a real amp? We have to be careful that our ego doesn't get in the way, right? That it doesn't get in the way of productivity. So, I don't know, guys. I'm probably not going to get rid of my EVH, but I'm just kind of putting it out there for our Tone Talk session here. Let me know your thoughts, though. Seriously, let me know your thoughts in the comments. This is probably going to start a really cool conversation. I did not intend on going on and on about this tone and amps and all this stuff for so long in this video, because it's not really what the video's about. I probably should have made this a separate video, but hey. Those of you who have hung around this long, thank you. Thanks for hanging around. Thanks for supporting my channel. Lastly, real quick, don't forget I'm giving away my free practice course, Metal Riffs and Licks. There's a link in the description of this video. If you've already got that, your next step is obviously get into my Metal Riff Master course. There's a link for that as well. So guys, again, leave me your comments on all this stuff, man. This is good tone talk. This is good conversation. Maybe I'll come back and do another video so that it'll be titled appropriately, because this is a lesson video here, and I didn't intend on going down this long rabbit trail of tone. So maybe I'll do a separate video on this and maybe elaborate a little bit more. But yeah, leave your comments, guys. Thanks again for supporting my channel and watching my videos, listening to my music, buying my courses, all that. Appreciate you guys. You know what to do. Until next time, keep it metal.